cultivate trust, if you're 100% honest with that person, if you are transparent about every action you make in your life, if they have access to whatever they want to see, and you're constantly creating trust, but for whatever reason, they still might be jealous or insecure or not believing you. How does someone get someone to trust them? Or is it not about them at that stage and it's about the other person and their insecurities?
Well, it depends very much on the particulars of the situation. Um, so I don't know if there's a generic answer to that. I think that you can establish the ground rules explicitly, and have a discussion about it. Are we going to lie to each other or not? Are we going to tell each other the truth to the degree that we can, to make that an actual goal, and to talk through the consequences of doing that and not doing it? And then I would also say, whenever a hiccup occurs in the relationship, maybe you don't call it out at each hiccup, because you have to have a certain amount of silent tolerance in any relationship.
I actually disagree with this. I believe if you have too much quote unquote silent tolerance, then you get treated as though you're weak. And if you get treated as though you're weak, then what ends up happening is you get used. And like the silent tolerance thing is not a good it's not a good strategy. And the reason is because appeasement is not a good strategy in general. When you see behavior that you don't like, you have to call it out whether you want to or not. And once the person understands that you will call out behavior you don't like every time, that will actually greatly reduce the quantity of times that the unpleasant behavior happens, because the person knows that the instant that they bring up something that's very unpleasant, that it's going to be an argument, that it's going to lead to bad stuff. And so what happens is it's trained to not happen.
To let small infractions go. But if
Right, that's called picking your battles.
they repeat, my rule is 3 times. And it's the rule that I share with my wife. If something happens 3 times that is causing emotional upset, anger, jealousy, disappointment, resentment, frustration, any of those things,
Right, so if the girl cheats on you 3 times, then you get mad. No. But no, I know he's not referring to that. I understand. He's referring to small infractions, like, she leaves the plate, beside the sink instead of in the sink or something, like something ridiculous like this, but again, like this sort of thing, like, I think in general, you don't negotiate with the T word, like you need to call out the behavior that you don't like, and you have to call it out ruthlessly, because if you don't, you're going to allow, basically the idea is this: the behavior that you tolerate is the behavior you agree with or you allow. And if you do tolerate it, then it's going to continue, and in fact, it's going to get worse. Hello and welcome to the Helios blog. My name is Helios, here for another reaction video. If you're new to the channel, liking the content, hit that sub, hit all the notifications. If you'd like to support me, I do have a Patreon with exclusive content. It's patreon.com/theheliosblog. So I've changed it, actually. We have deleted videos from YouTube as a section. We have literature. And we're also going to have scientific articles that I'm going to read and explain. Okay, so those are the 3 sections. You could also support me by dropping me a donation, like Tom M. Shout outs to him. All right, the link is in the description. Let's continue.
anything that you don't want to experience, and that you especially don't want to experience repeatedly, then you can call it out. And
that's right.
And if you have 3 examples, your case is much better made than if you just have 1. And I would also say that when you call it out, you could say, look, we were at a party the other night, and it looked to me, I felt as if you were paying too much intense attention to Dave. Mm-hmm. There was some flirting going on there. That's what it looked like to me. There was some flirting going on there. And, that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah. If your girl is flirting with other guys in front of you at a party, your relationship is dead. There is no relationship. We're not discussing, right? Like, because if the action is blatant in front of your face, imagine what it's like behind your back. You see what I'm saying? So no, that's not like, that's not a good example, Jordan. That is a serious infraction. That's not something we can tolerate 3 times.
Well, you don't say, well, you were flirting, stop doing it. You say, well, this is how it looked. This is what it looked like to me, and here was my response. And then you want to think, and maybe I'm a damn fool and blind and jealous and stupid, and I'm misinterpreting, or maybe it was a harmless flirtation of the sort that people will engage in because it adds a little bit of spice to a social interaction. You want to find out. Like it's really convenient if it's the other person's fault, except then you're laden with living with that person. So it really doesn't help you anyways, but it's convenient because then they have to change. But you got to think about this over the long run. You're going to be interacting with this person on a minute by minute basis for decades. If you're the idiot and that's causing trouble, then you should find out. So you want to say, well, look, this is what I saw.
Actually, the way that he's explaining it, it invites you to be gaslighted, right? Oh, it was nothing. You know, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. He's just a friend, you know, and stuff like that. This sort of advice invites men to get gaslighted, to get destroyed. So I actually disagree with this advice.
What's your explanation of what's going on? And then they'll offer you their viewpoint, and hopefully they'll do the same thing. They'll think, well, this is my intent.
Again, what this presumes is that women are rational, women speak logically, men and women are equal. Like, no. And the equalist idea that there can be open and honest communication without, like, this frame of relationships are about communication. What does it actually do? Well, women are better communicators than men, so it puts women automatically in the winning position, right? And most men are not prepared to deal with the common traps that women put men in, which is like what I just said, you know, that he's just a friend, don't worry about him, it wasn't like this actually happened, gaslighting, which is, that didn't happen, you're crazy, etc., etc., right? It's like, no. If she was flirting with the guy in front of your face, it means she's flirting with guys behind your back. If she's flirting with guys behind your back, she's likely cheated on you, which means that the relationship is likely over. That's how that goes, guys. There's no like, oh, a few there's no like sugarcoating or putting on like these kid gloves, you know. Oh, a few days ago, I felt as though la happened, and as a result, you know, like XYZ. No, this is ridiculous.
And maybe they have to go think about it, but this is my intent and this is what I saw, and I think you're being oversensitive in that situation. And you peel back the explanations layer by layer until you both agree on what happened, and more importantly, on what you're going to do about it in the future. And that's really hard, and especially if there is something going on that's not straight, because that will require quite a bit of digging. It'll probably result in anger and tears and a fight.
Right, because those are the common strategies: anger, tears, and fighting back, just to deflect responsibility, basically.
And that's very unpleasant. It's easier in the short term to avoid that, but hopefully the consequence of that is you don't have to have that fight again.
Right.
You have to come to a negotiated agreement about that situation, and you have to pay attention to your own uncomfortable negative emotions in order to manage that, and not pretend that everything's all right or that you're nicer.
That's absolutely true. But this idea of having to come to a negotiated agreement, like, no, we're not out here like negotiating attraction, like, and stuff like that. Like, if you're doing stuff like that, you're going to have a really bad time. We're not like negotiation. Again, as I said, we're not negotiating with T-word. Okay? All right, let's continue.
Than you are, or that you're less jealous than you are, or less blind, or see, one of the things I learned from Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst, about marriage was that there is a reason marriage was a vow. Like the vow is that you stick together. Okay, so now imagine that's a vow. Okay,
I mean, it was, but in 2022, it's not because of, stuff like no fault divorce, and etc. So maybe it was at some point in the past, in the distant past, but now it's really not. So, like, trusting the word of a person that can break that word at any moment and come out on top, no matter what you try to do. I mean, I don't know about you, but it doesn't sound like a good deal to me. All right, here's an article by Rollo Tomasi. It's called The Male Experience. A little over 15 years ago, my wife was pregnant with baby Tomasi. For most of her adult life, Mrs. Tomasi has been a medical professional. So when she was knocked up, she and her girlfriends at the hospital would take any free moment they got to sneak into the ultrasound room to have a peek at our gestating daughter. As a result, we have about 4 times as many ultrasound pics as most other couples get. I actually have images of baby as a multi-celled organism. It was during one of these impromptu scannings that we discovered what the gender of our child would be. We were both more than a bit impatient and didn't want to wait for the silly build-up to the OBGYN. So we hit up a girlfriend and my wife to do another ultrasound around the right trimester. She scanned for a bit and said, "Oh yeah, you've got a girl." We asked how she could be so sure and she said, "Her hands aren't in the right place." We were like, "What?" Then she explained, "Almost always when the baby is a boy, his hands will be down around his crotch once he's matured to a certain phase in the pregnancy. There's not much to do in there, so they play with themselves. Your daughter's hands are usually up around her face." After hearing this, it was at that point I began to appreciate the power of testosterone. Whenever I read someone tell me that bedroom fun isn't really a quote-unquote need, I think about how even in the womb the influence of testosterone is there. For better or worse, our lives as men center around our capacity to control, unleash, mitigate, and direct that influence. Socially, we build up appropriate conventions intended to bind it into some kind of uniformity, to prevent the destructive potential and exploit its constructive potential, while personally we develop convictions, psychologies, and internalized rules by order of degree to live our lives with this influence always running in the background of our subconsciousness. Experience. Women become very indignant when trying to understand the male experience. This is due in most part to women's innate solipsism and their presumption that their experience is the universal one. Part of this presumption is due to social reinforcement, but the social presumption, essentially the equalist presumption, is rooted in women's base indifference to anything external that doesn't affect them directly and personally. If everyone is essentially the same and equal, we're acculturated to encourage this perspective. It leaves women to interpret their imperatives and innate solipsism to be normative for men. So it often comes with a lot of shock and indignation, which women instinctively crave, when women are forced, sometimes rudely, to acknowledge that men's experience doesn't reflect their own. The reactive response is to force-fit men's experience into women's solipsistic interpretations of what it should be, according to a feminine primary perception of what works best for women. On an individual woman's level, this amounts to denial and rejection of a legitimate male primary experience through shame or implied femme-centric obligations to accept and adopt her experience as his responsibility. On a social level, this conflict is reflected in social conventions and feminine-centric social doctrines, as well as being written directly into binding laws that forcibly enact a feminine-centric perspective into our social fabric. Feminine solipsism and the primacy of the female experience superseding the male experience begins with the individual woman and extrapolates into feminine primary social constructs. Virtually every conflict between the genders comes back to the rejection of the legitimacy of the male experience. As I've stated in the past, for one gender to realize their bedroom fun imperative, the other gender must sacrifice their own. In virtually every dynamic I've ever written about the fundamental lack of understanding the male experience and how it influences the perception of the gender. Whether it's understanding our bedroom fun impulse, our idealization of love, or appreciating the sacrifices men uniquely make to facilitate a feminine reality, the disconnect always distills down to a fundamental lack of appreciating the legitimacy of the male experience. It would be too easy to cop out and to simply write this disconnect off as an existential difference. Obviously, men and women cannot spend time in each other's skin to directly appreciate the experience of the other. However, since the feminine imperative is the normative one in our current social makeup, the presumption is that a feminine-directed quote-unquote equalism is the only legitimate experience. Thus, the masculine experience is by default delegitimized, if not vilified, for simply reminding the feminine that inherent, evolved bedroom fun differences challenge equalism by masculinity's very presence. I reject your reality and replace it with my own. Men just being men is a passive challenge to the feminine imperative. RP awareness is a direct challenge to the legitimacy of a feminine primary experience. It's important to recall here that the primacy of the female experience begins on the personal level with an individual woman and then exponentially multiplies into a social scale. When you assert yourself as a RP man, you're asserting your disconnect from that feminine primary frame. This begins on a personal level for women and then extrapolates into a social affront for all women. The initial shock and indignation is one of interrupting her comfortable, predictable expectations of men in the feminine-defined, solipsistic reality she experiences for herself. As even the most rookie of RP men will attest, the legitimate female experience rejects this assertion, most times with an amount of hostility. As expected, men are met with a socially reinforced, prepared responses designed to defend against attempts to question the legitimacy of the primacy of the feminine experience. Shaming is often the first recourse. Even most passive challenges warrant shaming, but character assassination and disqualifications based upon a feminine primary perspective are the go-to weapons of the solipsistic nature of the feminine mindset, even when men are the ones subscribing to it. The next weapon in the feminine psychological arsenal is histrionics. Aggrandized exaggerations and overblown strawman tactics may seem like a last resort for men to the man attempting to rationally impose his RP, legitimized male experience, but know histrionics for what they are, a carefully designed, feminine-specific and socially approved failsafe for women. In the same vein as women's prerogative, which is that they can change their minds, and the feminine mystique, female histrionics are a legitimized and socially excusable tactic with the latent purpose of protecting a woman's solipsistic experience. She's an emotional creature, and your challenge to her ego only brings out the hysteric in her. It's men's fault that they don't get it, and it's men's fault for bringing it out of her by challenging her solipsism, and thus she's excused from her histrionics at men's cost. Alright, back to the video here.
You do not get to leave, period. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, on the upside, it means that you don't have to be alone. It means that your family will have continuity over decades. It means that the narrative of your life won't be fragmented and broken by divorce or sequential divorce. It means
Indeed.
that your children can grow up and maybe have their children within a continuing family. It means that your children will be able to maintain relationships with the grandparents on both sides and the cousins. Like, it's a big deal to maintain that. There's huge advantages in it.
It's a big deal, but again, in 2022, with the current laws and what they encourage, that's not what happens a lot of the time. In fact, about half the time. And when that half occurs, it's like 90% of the time initiated by women. So it's very important to teach women like what they actually should be doing for the benefit of literally everyone, for the benefit of themselves, the benefit of the husband, the benefit of the children, the benefit of the extended family, everyone's benefit, and by extension, society, right?
It means that you'll have someone there when you're not well, and so will your partner. And it'll mean that you have someone to share all of the positive things of life with. So there's huge advantages to it. Okay, so why does it have to be a vow? Well, I don't think you can tell the truth to someone who can run away. Because if you tell the truth to someone and they can run away, then they'll run away.
Right.
Right? Because you're a mess, man. And not just because of your own inadequacies, but because human beings are so complicated and have such dark corners and have had, unresolved problems in their life, sometimes that stem back generations and are twisted and bent in all sorts of ways. And you can't, it's very, very difficult to reveal that except to someone who can't run away.
Except that's not the current reality we live in. It's not a vow anymore. It's just, oh, you're unhappy, quote unquote. Okay, you can leave. And then who gets wrecked? Well, who gets wrecked is every single person around, including yourself, right? So
now that I'm not saying that people should never separate. I am saying, though, that it's better not to, if you can manage it.
Exactly.
But then the other thing, too, is if you can't run away, then you're motivated in a different way. It's like, I'm stuck with this woman, and she's stuck with me. And unless we want to have this same goddamn fight over and over and over for the next who knows how long, why don't we straighten it out? and then we can put it behind us. See, the vow gives you a kind of desperation that is another motivation to actually solve the problems. And if you've got a way out, you can always stay hidden. You can guard yourself, you can protect yourself, and even protect that part of yourself that thinks that it can leave if things get too bad. Now, the problem with that, in my estimation, is that you're going to drag your stupidity into the next relationship.
Right. Always do, right?
Well, generally speaking, right? And
so if you don't fix the issues, then they're going to come up again. True. And it is very important for you as a man to have your crap together, as it were. But here's the thing. It's not that every woman will. It's that any woman can. So until the divorce laws are reformed, right, and the marriage laws, it's just not a smart idea to get married, right? Because before, it was illegal to get divorced. You couldn't break up, and so you had to fix the problems, right? But nowadays, that's not the case. Nowadays, you can just do whatever you want. And so you can be bad and no harm will come to you, right? You can cheat, you can lie, you can, get into massive debt, you can be just rude and A-word to your partner. And I'm talking about women here, because if men do it, what happens? Well, what happens is the divorce happens immediately. Whereas men only tend to divorce for illicit substance use and the girl being locked up in a metal box. So let's put it that way, right? Those are pretty much the only reasons why men will divorce. Whereas for women, they can even divorce for something so small as I'm unhappy, right? So you see the difference?
So now you can get under unfortunate circumstances, you can get tangled up with someone who's not playing a straight game with you and won't, and it's just impossible. But
right,
I'm not talking about the limit cases, I'm talking about the average case, the average amount of unhappiness and trouble. It's still plenty. And then just one more thing I'd add to that. You also have to, in some sense, shake the illusion that the other person is somehow not you. You're so tied up with them that there's no difference between you and them in some sense, is that what's good for her is going to be good for you and vice versa.
That's actually right. That ties into the ownership dynamic, right? Like what's good for the man in the relationship is actually good for the woman as well, because it's kind of like this. If the man is happy, right, then the man is providing to everybody around, and so everyone is happy. So what's good for them is actually what's good for you. That's the idea there. Okay, let's go on to this Reddit story. This is from Relationship Advice, posted 20 hours ago. So girlfriend wanted an open relationship, so I broke up with her. Now she wants to get back together. I thought I would give an update since people DM'd me to post one when I can. I didn't expect to update this soon. After posting and expressing to some people that I had a suspicion she cheated on me, excuse my cough, I couldn't get the nagging feeling out of my head. I didn't want to know at first, but decided to go digging and ask mutual friends what X had been up to the month she was acting shady. I didn't expect one of her closest friends to spill the beans, but she did. My suspicions were correct. She'd been cheating on me with a mutual friend's cousin. I decided to message the guy on FB. When I messaged him, he wanted to meet in person, so I met him at a local pub. When I got there, he apologized and explained everything. How he didn't know she was in a relationship, and the day she called me wanting me back is the day he found out and broke it off. I can't fault the guy. He seemed genuine and really apologetic. On the plus side, I drank for free the entire time. He seems like a great guy, especially considering how he broke it off right away once he knew. I won't lie, he's handsome and a great guy, and I would let him sleep with me to rub it in my ex's face, lol. But at least I have a bit of closure now. I've blocked my ex on everything, and I'm gathering her stuff. She's left you to mail to her so she doesn't come knocking. It's taking a lot of power not to leave a note in the box along the lines of, Mark seems nice, too bad you lost him too. Sorry if this makes no sense. I'm typing this on my phone and my fat thumbs are doing me no favors. It doesn't help me, I'm a bit tipsy. But I'm glad I could vent. TLDR, she was cheating. All right, let's look at the top comment. 690 upvotes. You're lucky she showed a real self before marriage. Good luck, man. Exactly. Once a cheater, always a cheater is the principle there. Okay. 674 upvotes. Good job, OP. You trusted your instinct and got rid of your lying, cheating GF. 674 upvotes. When I read this, instantly in my mind the word legendary popped up. Yeah, so the guy broke it off once he knew. He was genuine. Again, guys, you don't really know, right? Because the girl could just lie and say she's single, and that's all it takes. Okay. All right. 658 upvotes. You know what? Why not add the note? Let her know that you know she's a lying cheater. There's no point. Like, ghosting is actually the best move. And the reason is because ghosting doesn't invite any extra drama, and it can't be used against you in a court of law. So, it's useless. All right. Guys, we're going to end the video there. Again, if you're new to the channel, liking the content, hit that sub, hit all for notifications. If you'd like to support me, I do have a Patreon with exclusive content. Patreon.com/theheliosblog. Just go there and subscribe. Again, here are the tiers, because I changed it. So the first tier is deleted videos from YouTube. So I just posted a bunch of the videos that YouTube demonetized or forced me to delete. I also have another one, which is I'm going to read literature that's related to RP, but I'm going to read it like an audiobook, so you can just go there and listen, and I'll put a little bit of commentary on there too. And then I'm also going to read scientific literature related to RP, and I'm going to explain it. So those are the 3 sections. And then there's a fourth, which is like, you can get all 3 for $10 or something, whereas each is $5, so you save some money. That's the idea. All right, you could also drop me a donation like Tom M here, shout outs to him. The link is in the description, guys. Again, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it, especially if you took the time out of your busy day to listen to the end of the video. You guys are wonderful, and I will see you next time.